This is Jerron Smith from Noble Desktop, back with another quick tip. This one's in After Effects, and basically what we're going to do is make a little blobby animation. In 3D animation, we actually call these metaballs, but it's just a kind of cool little blobby animation is what it looks like. It's a series of circles, honestly, just on a regular shape layer that are animating around. They get turned into these rounded blobby circles, and they closer as you can see them kind of blobbing or meshing together. And then that's turned into a pre-comp, which is then using a layer style inner glow in order to kind of look like this kind of like ghost-like thing. It's kind of cool. So let's get started. First, I've already gone ahead and made a relatively straightforward shape animation. It's just a shape layer. I just made it blue. You do it with the circle tool. And it's just really a series of circles, just one I called main circle, and then a bunch of others that I called satellite. You don't have to name them, but the key is they're all on one shape layer. And to move them around, I added the wiggle transform, which you can get right in the add option next to contents. And wiggle transform, I'll just open it for a second. And you just set that by, like in this case, 20 pixels. It can move in any direction, up, down, left, or right. It can vary by like 10% in scale. So it basically, if I disable it, this little eye can disable the entire effect. All we have is a series of circles just sitting on that one shape layer. When it's enabled, they're kind of bouncing around, some are touching each other. And this is what's allowing that kind of blobby behavior. If they weren't moving, it just wouldn't be as interesting. And if you're not familiar with it, there are plenty of tutorials on creating shapes and playing with them. But this is basically, wiggle transform is one of the shape effects that's only available for After Effects shape layers. And you can make those using the shape tools. They don't have to be circles. I just thought they'd be cool if they were. Now, for the real blob behavior, I want to make a new adjustment layer. Okay, and I'm just going to rename that, right-click rename, or I use the return key on my keyboard to make it active. I'm just going to call that blobby effect. Okay, and I'm going to add a couple of effects to that. I'm going to need effects and presets. Load in for a second. I'm going to basically need one effect to make it rounded, and then I'm going to do another effect to kind of make it more rounded, because I think it's cool. So the effect to make it rounded, weirdly enough, is actually called roughen edges. So my adjustment layer is highlighted. I'll just double click to apply it. And yeah, something called roughen edges is actually going to make this more rounded and smoother. It's already started to kind of do that. If you notice, you can see these kind of like rounded edges here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise the border. Now that does make it rougher because roughen edges use an effect called fractal influence. I'm just going to pull that down to 0. And now I've got effectively smooth edges. And if I play this right now, it works out pretty well, honestly. But what else can I do? So most of the settings, I actually left the edge type on roughen. You can play with that. It will give you different results depending on the edge type. But for what I'm doing with the soft edges, roughen is fine. Scale, you can adjust, but I'll leave it at its default setting. I'm just going to right click it to 100. And edge sharpness, basically, if your edges become too blurry, you can use edge sharpness to sharpen them up. It does actually go higher. Now, I'm going to raise the border considerably higher, which is going to smooth it off. So the higher I raise the border, the smoother it becomes. If you raise it too high, and if you're adjusting the scale, for example, you may end up with a setting where it becomes like really kind of blurry. So again, depending on what you're doing, it may get a little blurry on you. But I have a way to fix that. It's not really a problem. But it's still kind of blurry for me. I could eventually probably sharpen it up if I wasn't scaling it quite so much, which is fine. Okay, it's not a problem. We can fix it. The complexity controls for the roughen edges, how complex the edge itself is, but because I'm smoothing it off, it's not really going to do much in this case. So I'll just reset that back to 0. It's a 2. I could actually make it 1 if I wanted to. So I've got something that's kind of nice and blurry. I like that. But because I wanted to keep the scale at its setting, I didn't want to actually, I could raise edge sharpness a little bit, but it'll still kind of be blurry. So I want to use another effect for this. The other effect is actually threshold. but it's not the normal threshold, it's CC threshold, not threads. That would make it look like it's kind of like a basket weaving. So I can also apply that. And now this is what happens by default. It just gets rid of all the color because threshold normally makes things black or white. But what I'm going to do is change the channel from luminance to alpha. And what it basically does is it pretty much takes out any of the blurriness that's on the layer. It's forcing everything when it comes to transparency, it's alpha, to be either fully transparent or fully opaque. Now, if you play with the threshold, it'll actually make things go away. So be careful, by the way. And if you take it down to 0, you're just going to box. So you can adjust the threshold to control how much of the transparent area is included. Okay, and I'm working at half quality. If I worked at full, I could, and you'll see the edge change a little different. I'm working at half, it just previews a lot faster. So that'll basically get rid of that edge, no problem at all. Now, if I wanted to actually make it more blurry, which would give me a more interesting rounded effect sometimes, I could actually add a Gaussian blur to this pretty much before the threshold, but I don't think I need to. I think it works pretty well the way it is now. So I'm just going to grab these two layers and I'm going to pre-compose them, turning them into their own comp. I'm just going to call this my blob. Okay, I got all the options turned off. Okay, and I get that. And this is how I'm going to make it look like the kind of ghostly effect. So as you can see, the background is really transparent. It's not really black, but it looks nicer when I see the glow effect against the black background. So there's nothing here in that empty black space, really. So now that I've got this, I'm going to add a layer style to it. I'll right click, layer styles, and I'm going to add the inner glow. And I'm just going to see layer style, inner glow. I'm going to raise the size a bit for this so it's a little wider. I can adjust the choke if I want to basically control how faded it is. I want it to actually be very faded like this personally. You can adjust the range depending on like the effect you're looking for. But in the end, this is basically just against blue. Now, I'm going to actually change the color of the glow to blue itself. And eventually what happens is if I make it too close to the original, you just can't see it at all. But I'm going to make it original. I wanted a blue kind of like bubbly effect. So how do I fix this? It lies in blending options. One of the options that you see in blending options, you open it up, is advanced blending. And this is actually fill opacity. If I lower it to 0, the glow effect itself remains, but the layer's content is disabled. And I'm going to go now make a few adjustments. I think I'm going to make that a little brighter. Just like that, kind of bluish white. I think I'll go in and just adjust the size a little more. And maybe, again, change the range so it's a little softer. But you can play with that however you like. I mean, no problem at all. You can even add a little noise into that with jitter, a little variation. But again, that's up to you. I have fun with that. And when I play it, that's the result. So in the pre-comp, the bubbles, the circles are moving, giving us this different look. The glow effect is then affecting the resulting pre-comp, and I get this kind of bubbly effect. Now, I can always go back in because I don't lose anything, double-click on my blob, and I've got my blob effect right here, so I can make my adjustments and see it right here. Okay, which is pretty cool. So I can always go back in and maybe change the border, maybe change the influence. I'll bring the scale, by the way, back to its original setting, right-click and reset that. And I'll basically get a different result now from this. I think my border is a little too high, maybe. So I'll bring that down a bit. And if I really, really want to adjust it, I'm going to go back to my circles. I'm going to open them up. I'm thinking I'm going to go back into my contents, is where the circles are, where transform is. I'm going to open that up, and I'm going to open transform, which is controlling how far away from each other they are. And I'm going to bump this up. Maybe instead of 20 pixels, it's going to be 50 pixels. So I can get a lot more of that bouncy movement on. Okay, actually, I think I'll do 100. I want them to kind of separate sometimes, like that, so I can get that behavior. And when I go back to blobby shapes, that's what I'm getting out of my animation. And that's how to create blobby metaball-like circles with a nice little glow effect in After Effects.